Welcome to the Cookies and Coffee Podcast. My name is Cale Owen.
And my name is Maggie Owen. I am the VP of Operations and Cale is the CEO. And together we run 2 8-figure businesses and we are in the middle of building a startup.
And this podcast is to document our journey as high-level executives, as parents, and as husband and wife, so that we can share what's working for us, what we found that doesn't work, lessons, tips, and tricks, so that if you are married and working together or want to do that, you can learn from what has worked for us and for many other people so that you can have an incredible marriage, an incredible business, and an incredible life. All right, welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with my beautiful co-host, Maggie Owen. Let's talk about, we're finishing kind of the top 10 reasons why people get divorced. We have some doozies today, so let's get right into it. We got 4 of them, so we're going to finish with 4.
We've already summarized.
Yeah, so we've covered so far. We've covered so far from the beginning: marital infidelity, financial disagreements, weight gain, lack of intimacy, lack of equality, and lack of preparation. So now we're getting into some other stuff. So this one I think is a slam dunk, pretty easy. Poor communication.
Yeah.
We've talked about this at length. So I don't know how much we need to get into it, but if you're wondering, go back, listen to, I think it's episode 4. We talk about cheat codes. So go back to episode 4, listen to cheat codes that will help you understand poor communication. But poor communication in and of itself, in my opinion, and I'd love to hear your side.
Well, real quick before we dive into it, what is the summary on the poor communication?
In some ways, many of these causes of divorce can ultimately be boiled down to miscommunication. They're talking about the previous reasons. Correct. Communication is essential in any relationship, and without healthy communication habits, spouses may run into issues with resentment, frustration, or misaligned expectations. It's easy to describe bad communication: spouses who yell at each other throughout the day, spouses who are passive aggressive, or spouses who simply do not talk at all about the things that really matter to them. Describing healthy communication is harder, but marriage counselors would surely agree that it requires intentionality, patience, and mindfulness. So,
yeah. Does it give any examples of what good communication looks like? It just says that.
No, it just says that a lack of this healthy, clear communication can lead to misplaced expectations regarding physical intimacy, family dynamics, spousal responsibilities, and money. In short, it can snowball into a whole host of problems and finally lead to divorce.
Yeah.
I think it's all about handling expectations.
Yeah. But communication is definitely like a foundation. It's a fundamental piece of any relationship, but definitely of a marriage.
And when we say communication, we mean speaking exactly what your expectations are for the other person and going back and forth and understanding that there's compromise between all of those and finding the middle ground as a team to see what success looks like in your relationship and what it is, and then follow through.
Yep.
Like, it's just setting right expectations. I don't really know. I think it's because we take it for granted because we've been doing this. We intentionally did this and practiced this for a while. Now it's kind of like second nature.
Yeah.
But it's...
Well, maybe let's like dive in there. How do we get to, because you've always been a good, you've gotten better at communicating, but you've always been a communicator. I wouldn't say like a great communicator, but a communicator. You've always wanted to communicate to resolve conflict and issues, whereas like I was the opposite. I'm like, if I ignore it long enough, it'll go away and then it'll be fine. And then we'll just like move on from it. And so, we had to work on it and be intentional about how are we going to improve our communication. And I would say like we honestly, at least for me, like I didn't even do it in a way, like I didn't do it because it was going to improve our relationship. Like we did it out of necessity to grow the business. And like, if we don't do this, the business isn't going to grow. And we're having a lot of like frustrations and headbutting within the business. And so we have to change that dynamic. And so we started working on it. At least I started working on my communication specifically to grow professionally and grow our business and get better.
That was my secret little plan.
Oh, was it your secret plan? And then it translated over obviously into our relationship of us communicating. Because, I wasn't just going to communicate one way in one area of my life and not use that same technique or like refocus on that in my personal life too. Yeah.
One of the things that helps me when I think about this from the beginning is obviously I had a very good replica of what a good marriage, in my opinion, would look like. Your parents have been married for a really long time. And in my parents' life, I had a good idea of what I wanted in some ways. In others, no. But one of the things that for me that helps me a ton and keeps me from shutting up or like blocking out things I don't want to talk about or anything else is number one, realizing and remembering that we're a team and that we're one. Number two is that there's no ego in this, meaning like anytime my ego gets in the way of, I think I should be better at this, or I'm a better person, not than you, but just like, how could my wife bring up stuff that I'm bad at? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, we're on the same team. Anytime I strip away the ego, as soon as I made that like a priority and became, I'll use a buzzword, vulnerable and open about any faults or things that I wanted, that's when life becomes a lot better and communication becomes really easy to have.
Yeah.
Because
well, it also opens up when you're vulnerable too. It allows you to expose obviously like weaknesses of like where you're falling short. And I would say in most cases in relationships, you're not the exact replica of your partner. And so they probably have skill sets different than you know, personal and professional, but you know, on the personal side. And so it allows you to share those burdens and those vulnerabilities with somebody else to help pick up the slack in areas where you might be falling short, or like allow you to help you, push you to be better in those areas. And so I think, you know, really opening up and being vulnerable to one another has allowed us to be able to like, one, sharing it together because we are one team, and then also figure out if like, okay, well, if you aren't good at this, you know, especially the business side, we learned really early on, it's like you are a lot more sales and marketing focused. Like your skill set is really heavily there. Like we've obviously leaned into other skill sets and grown, but like really early on, it's like, okay, you really excel in sales and marketing. You're not very good at being detail oriented and organized with like running the business. So it was like really easy to say, okay, well, I'm very good at all of these things. And so instead of you shouldering it all by yourself and trying to do it all, you like shared like, hey, I'm really struggling in this area. I need you to just own it and figure it out. And I was like, okay, great. I can definitely do that. Like, I'm really good at this, but I have no idea what's happening on marketing. I don't know how to create a Facebook ad. I have no idea how to run ads on Facebook. I need you to just own all of this because I have no idea how to do that. And so that really allowed us to really say like, okay, well, I'm struggling here. And this doesn't have to be, you know, professional either. Like this could be in life as well, but like, I'm really struggling in this area, and your partner can help either figure out how to support you in getting better in the area, or just take it over for you altogether. Because sometimes it's like, it's not worth you learning a new skill set because your skill set is so valuable somewhere else versus something that's like, I don't have to work hard at it because I already understand it. I'll just take it and own it. And then you don't have to worry about it at all.
Yep. Or if you both don't know it, just come to the agreement that you're both going to work on it together and figure it out together.
Yeah.
And you don't have to shoulder the burden by yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's the key, is like, everyone talks about, well, you need someone to talk to and you need all this stuff. And it's like, that's what your spouse is really, truly for. Now, if you need a therapist or something like that, that's great. But like, you shouldn't be going to your friends or anyone else unless you've already talked to your spouse and been open about these things. And I think it's really important, again, going back to the ego aspect of it and the vulnerability and being open, there's a lot of freedom there. Because when you just let go and you realize, some people are so guarded because they're worried that the other person will use the weakness against them. Here's the deal. So what if they do? Go down the rabbit hole. So what if they do? Okay. What are they going to do? They're going to make fun of you. They're going to maybe make things uncomfortable for you in the house. Like worst case scenario, they start doing things that are just terrible, right? I'm not an advocate for divorce, but if it gets to that level, you could. If there's no change in the relationship and you've gone to therapy, you've done this. So worst case scenario, that's a terrible case scenario. But worst case scenario, that's it. Best case scenario, and this is usually what happens when this happens, is when you are open about issues and you do show your weaknesses, the other person will most likely, that will create a deeper connection with that person because they also know that they're not perfect. Unless you're dealing with someone who has obviously got some mental disorders and thinks that they're perfect. But for the average human, if you did a good job choosing a spouse or a partner, they are going to be someone who's going to relate to that in some way. And they're going to appreciate the fact that you opened up, which will then create a deeper connection and better communication. So like, for me, my thought is like, okay, I'm going to open up and I'm going to be open about any insecurities or any issues that I have or needs or wants or all these things. Because if I don't, I'm guaranteed to not have a very intimate and great relationship. I have a much greater chance of having, not guaranteed, because it all depends on how you accept it and what you want to do with it. But I know if I don't do it, I'm guaranteed to not have it. I know that I have a high percentage chance of having an exceptional relationship if I do open up. And so like, do I want the guaranteed no, or do I want the opportunity? Yeah. That's like, I'll take the opportunity every single day. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I think about it. Again,
Yeah.
I think about it like logically from the standpoint of like percentage chances of success, like what's my downside risk, all that stuff. So I don't know why, but it's kind of been something that I've naturally thought of. And it's like, let me play the percentages here. It makes sense to do this because it just is a better relationship, period. And I want a better relationship. I want an exceptional marriage. I don't want just a blah marriage. Like I want to have an incredible marriage with you.
Yeah.
Which is cool. But yeah, communication, when we say communication too, it's like explicitly clear communication. No ifs, ands, or
Using
buts.
words.
Yes, using words. If you have to write them down, write them down.
Yeah, that works too.
It doesn't matter. Just, it has to be explicitly clear. No gray area, nothing. Just be very clear with your expectations.
Yeah.
And don't punish the person either if they maybe don't meet an expectation. Encourage them to continue to try to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I do think that's important because I think sometimes a lot of people, it's like, oh, okay, well, I tried and they didn't meet this expectation. It's like, okay, well, how did you treat them? Like, did you put them down for it? And then the likelihood of them, like they were punished versus rewarded for trying. So they're punished for failing instead of being rewarded for trying with it. And so like that, I think that matters a lot in a relationship. It's like positive reinforcements along the journey is like you have a higher likelihood of success that the person's going to show up and continue to keep doing the thing that you want them to do.
100%. Cool. Want to go to the next one?
Yeah.
Addiction. Addiction comes in many forms. Drug and alcohol abuse are the ones we think of most readily, yet addiction to sex, pornography, or gambling can be just as detrimental to a marriage. The reason for this is that a true addiction takes over a person's life, compromises their decision-making abilities, and can shatter spousal intimacy. Additionally, addiction can come with a high financial cost. In some cases, it can also endanger employment. While addiction recovery is attainable and can sometimes save a marriage, untreated addiction will often result in divorce.
Yeah. Not surprised that untreated addiction
Yep.
leads to divorce. Like that's probably pretty accurate.
Yep.
This is a hard one, obviously, because I don't think either one of us struggles with addiction to anything specifically. So I do think that's
Good times.
oh my gosh,
Good vibes.
the lamest dad jokes.
I'm addicted to good vibes.
I think what's interesting about this, and I do not know, obviously not a doctor and don't have this education, so I have no idea, but I'd be curious if there's any chemical, so like drug and alcohol addiction, there's actually like a chemical like imbalance or like there's something like like going on in your brain that getting help for versus like, I'm curious if like gambling or like pornography addiction has the same type of effect as like a substance abuse addiction does.
Yeah.
I don't know that. Because it'd be curious because like one, it's like, okay, well, can you change the pattern of behavior enough times where it's like, it would be difficult, but like if there's nothing, chemically wrong with your brain, it's like you've just been rewarded for like these dopamine hits.
You have to change the reward system.
Yeah. For like gambling versus like, that's not going to work with someone who's addicted to alcohol.
Correct.
Because there's actually like, they have to go detox and there's like actually physical ramifications of their addiction. And so one of these, I was just wondering if that like matters on how you handle. I feel like that would play a part in how you would show up with your significant other.
Yeah.
With the addiction.
100%.
Because like one is like you would have to like see probably all instances you'd have to see someone and get help, but like one's probably going to a rehab center versus like one it like is like probably changing behaviors or obviously all of it's changing behaviors, but I think one probably would be easier in a certain instances to like work through than the other.
For sure. And I think it's easy. I think it's important to remember that they most likely are feeling shame and guilt if they're going through the addiction in some form or fashion, whatever it is. Most of the time they're not dumb to it. And they're also not, they may not be fully in it, depending on the type of addiction that they're in. They may not fully realize the harm that they're causing because they're so solely focused on the addiction and what they're trying to get, whether it's a high, whether it's gambling, whatever it might be. But it is, I think, very important to understand that they are suffering from shame and guilt. And that if you continue to pour that on and make them feel worse and worse, it doesn't improve the cycle.
Yeah, it won't make it worse.
It won't. And they are the ones that have to make the choice. That's the hardest part, I think, is you can't make the choice for them. They have to be the ones, no matter what addiction it is, they have to be the ones to make the choice to change, to want to change.
Yeah.
And follow through with that. And then I think it's best that you just have to support them, whatever it is. So
yeah.
I don't think
I think probably like in like from an overarching standpoint, like a high level view, knowing it's probably not going to be solved on their own. Like you have to figure out the root cause of the issue of like, why are they feeling the need to be addicted to whatever it is? And then it just brings in communication again too, right? And it's like having to communicate, like if somebody's like in addiction, they might not even notice the harm that it's causing too. And so like being open and communicating like the hurt that it's causing you or the people around them, and like showing up in like a loving and caring way, to your point of like supporting, communicating, but not in a way that's like putting people down, like not in a way that's putting them down, because it's only going to make it worse and probably drive them to do the opposite.
Yep. 100%. So next one, and this one might be a little bit difficult for us because I don't even know how to go about this, but abuse. So like obviously there's different types of abuse. You've got your physical abuse, you've got your verbal abuse, like
physical, emotional, mental,
all these different things.
abuse.
I mean, I can read this here. The most serious reason to consider divorce is any persistent pattern of spousal abuse. This certainly encompasses physical abuse, which can place one spouse's life in immediate danger. However, patterns of verbal or financial abuse can also be corrosive and are very valid grounds to leave the marriage. This is not just restricted to abuse between spouses either. When abuse is directed at a child, a sibling, or an elderly family member, that can be extremely concerning, all that stuff. So this is a very, very, unfortunately, I think it's more prevalent than what most people think.
Yeah.
And it's extremely concerning. And I don't really know how to handle that personally. Like I'm sitting here and I have no idea. Like I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's tough. I think, physical is a lot different. Obviously, physical is one of those things that's like, there's a tangible thing to tie it to.
Yeah.
Versus like emotional, financial, verbal abuse. It's like usually little things that like happen over time, which are like harder to pick out until all of a sudden you're like so deep in it.
I think it's one thing is like you mentioned this before one of the signs would be isolation. So like they're isolating you from your outside support network in some form or fashion.
Yeah. Family, friends.
Yeah. Usually it's the removal of that. There's also signs of it of putting you down. And then like there's multiple signs of like they will start to put you down in a specific way. And then they'll come back and build you back up and then push you down, build you back up. I mean, these are things that like, let's be real. These are things that guys that are players, right? They just do because they understand the emotional attachment that comes from this. And they will use this to their advantage. And some guys do it just simply to sleep with someone. But when you get into a relationship with someone who then creates this cycle of abuse, this just becomes a regular routine cycle, and it'll start small. And then when the first abuse happens, whether it's a physical, let's say someone gets hit, right? Massive amounts of apology. I've never done that before. I would never do that again. I'm so sorry. I can't believe what came over me. And then whichever side the spouse is on, they're like, I couldn't believe that happened. They're in a state of shock. They're so sorry. That's not them. They start defending the person. Then it goes back into another cycle.
Yeah.
And then those cycles can go a lot of different ways. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor, but obviously I think we would state the obvious. If there's physical abuse, leave.
Yeah.
That's so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things tying the person to it. If there's child abuse, definitely leave and report the person, like 1000%.
Yeah.
But it's also, my thing is like, if there's child abuse, I don't understand why parents don't leave. That I don't get. Because I can understand the thing on me. Because it's like, I can take it like, no, it's not them. You can find excuses. But when it's your child, that's what like baffles me. Unless you're getting death threats, unless you're scared for your life.
Yeah.
But even then it's like, is it worth it for your child? Like, your child's getting abused. Like it's your job. I can't even say this because I'm not trying to put down people in this situation, but like, if I thought about it, like logically, it's my job to protect my child. And like, if I'm putting my child consistently in a position where harm is done to them, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah.
And like, who else are they going to trust in life? Who else can do that? Right.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not in those situations. So it's very hard for me to talk about those.
Yeah. I think that's like the only times like we talk a lot about, at the, for our relationship, like at the top, you and I are the most important thing at the top.
Yep.
And then our kids, you know, we get so much hate for that of like, well, they can't defend themselves. They didn't ask to be here, like all this stuff. And it's like, that's not what we mean at all. Like our kids are very well taken care of and they have a roof over their heads and they're fed every day. And like
they get a ton of attention too.
They get a ton of attention. Like they're very well loved and taken care of. But like at the end of the day, our job is to make them contributing adults to society and be able to leave us when the time comes and be able to contribute to society, be able to function on their own, not need us. Like that is our job. And in a marriage, like you and I aren't going anywhere. It's like, it is our job to protect our relationship no matter what. But I think if abuse is involved, like that is the only time that the care, like the importance of a child should come first.
Yes. Agreed.
In that scenario.
Yep.
Of like, if a child is ever put in danger, they would 100% come first over the spouse. Mm-hmm. And that would be like 100% agree. Like that is obviously easier said than done. Like that is a reason to leave.
Yeah. I mean, you broke your vow, right? Isn't it protect and to care for?
Yeah.
You broke your vow on either side of the spousal side. You broke your vow. And there's obviously justice allows for mercy. And there has to be something there that it's like, okay. But my thing is like, if it happens twice, you got to go. Like you have to go.
Yeah.
Like it's very hard for me to believe that someone would raise their hand to their wife or their kids. I can't understand it. Because every true man that I know would never do that.
Yeah.
Ever do, and has never done that. And would never even think about the thought of that doesn't even come into their head.
Yeah.
Because it's not even possible. Like that reality does not exist. Then if that reality can exist for someone once, it will exist again a second time. And it will happen again a third time. And it will keep happening. Yeah. Because it's a slippery slope.
Yep. Yeah. This is definitely harder to talk about. I think from just a summary of this, it's like much harder. Like I have no idea how to speak to, like, if you're in it, this is happening. Like, I have no idea how to help in that situation. I would say, but speaking to the people who might not be fully in the relationship yet, it's like signs that you can look out for. And like, this is research you can get on the internet. It's just like, are you being isolated? Like, these are things that you can, like little things that you can pick up on to know if like, this is going to end up in a physically or an emotionally abusive relationship. It's like isolation, no longer doing the things that bring you joy anymore. Like, are you no longer doing the things that you love because this person is telling you can't go do them, or guilting you in hanging out with a friend or your family or whatever the case may be. Taking those things away. So it's like isolation, taking away things of joy. Like you're not doing the things that you once loved to do, are all signs that you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, and that could lead to other things down the road. Yeah.
You should also never, I think this is a basic thing, but like this isn't friends. It's hard for friends to ever figure this out. But like if you're in a relationship and you ever feel scared around that person, like fearful of something, I think that's like a good sign. Like to just be like, okay, maybe this isn't great. Yeah. Because you should never feel that way, ever. Yeah. With the person that you're with. Like,
or finally you have to like defend the person. Yeah. To the people around you, like defending their actions or the way they speak to you or whatever that is. Like constantly defending is another one. Yeah. Yeah. All right. What's the next one?
Last one? Yeah. Last one is difference in religion. Ooh. Let me read. This could be a big one. According to a Pew Research study, 69% of married people say their spouse shares their religious views. While it is not always necessary for married partners to have the same religion, it does make it more likely that their other values are in alignment, and it has practical benefits. The couple is more likely to agree to weekly religious observation, to see eye to eye on how they will raise their children, and more. For those who do not share a religion, marriage tends to be less happy. When partners marry without being clear about their religious views or about the other person's religious views, or if those views change over time, it can increase the risk of divorce. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty hard because a lot of times within religion, your values and your worldview is determined by religion. Yep. And so how you think about finances, how you think about treating other people, how you think about marriage, how you think about raising your kids, how you think about work, how you think about vacation, how you think about pleasure, how you think about all these things. Yep. Is seen through the lens of religion. And that's really hard. If you're different and you have different points of view. Can it work? Sure. It's just massively harder. Yeah. In the Bible, it talks about do not be unequally yoked. And when you talk about a yoke is back in the day, you have two oxen that are pulling a cart. They have a yoke around their neck to connect the two, right? And if you have an oxen that's smaller or you put a different animal, it's going to be unequally yoked.
Yep.
And you're going to have something where it's going to be offset. It's going to change the tempo. It's not going to go right. It's going to be harder to direct, and it's not going to be a true partnership. And in the Bible, it's talking about that, not from a size standpoint. It's talking about that from a spiritual standpoint.
Yeah.
Do not be unequally yoked. And there's a lot of merit to that. And I think it's fascinating too. I saw this tweet the other day and someone was like, oh yeah, it's Joe Rogan. He was asking, he's like, man, I wish there was just a book that would give people just basic instructions about life, like that would handle all sorts of different things in life. And people started just going off in the comments and they were just like, it's called the Bible. And it's like all these different things. And it is interesting. Like we're believers. So like we're biased, obviously.
Right.
But if you just go and read the Bible, and you read through, there's a lot of crazy stuff in there for someone who's not a believer. Like you'll go in and you'll read some absolutely absurd things that are just hard to believe actually happened. But there are so many lessons and so much wisdom in there that still works today.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that you can take.
Yeah.
I
agree. I think it's super, super important to be aligned on your religious views.
Yeah.
And again, it comes down to communication, like communicating that before you get married, right? It's like figuring out, and that kind of goes back to like the lack of preparation, right? It's like if you don't know that you're not spiritually aligned with your significant other, it's probably like you probably shouldn't move forward in a marriage if you aren't even aligned on that aspect or don't even know for that matter. I think it's like super important. Like, and those are things that we talked about this on a different podcast of like, these are things you should talk about like early on in the dating process, right? Because I think a lot of times too, it's like you're just like having fun, figuring things out, and you like don't talk about the hard stuff, and then you're already starting to feel, especially because nowadays, like people are sleeping together like right away, and so you're already like there is a chemical reaction that happens when you physically sleep with another person that brings you closer to that person, whether you think it's just whatever whatever it is. Like there's actually a chemical exchange that happens between the man and the woman when they sleep together. And so like you are automatically going to go closer to that person. And so I think if you don't talk about these things in the beginning, like early on, you start to create this attraction for this person and this like bond that isn't even built on any of these foundations of like your values, your religious views, communication, like none of these things, because people wait to talk about these things because they're the hard stuff to talk about. So they wait to talk about it. And then by the time it gets to the point to talk about these things and they are disconnected on it, it's like, but like we're really connected. We have this connection. It's like, it's okay if we're not aligned on this, but like we're aligned on this, but we're not aligned on our religious views, or we're not aligned on our parenting style, or we're not aligned on our goals in life and where we want to go. And it's like, it'll be okay because like we're so attracted to one another. But it's like, that's usually not the case. And I would assume that in most cases it leads to these, the study of like them getting divorced. And so that's why I think I'm such a huge advocate of like talking about these things, especially if you're like in the dating world and you're trying to find someone. It's like, talk about these things early on. Like, don't waste the time. Talk about them before you sleep together. Like, are you guys aligned? Does this stuff make sense? Like, what are your worldviews? Like, talk about them early. So that way you don't waste time for either one of you. And then also you don't create this like bond with somebody that's built off of just a physical attraction and having fun. And then you end up getting stuck somewhere because like you don't know how to get out of this relationship because like you feel connected to that person, even though you're not aligned with anything else of where you want to go in life.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a mic drop. I like it. Cool. All right, guys. That's the last of our 3 episodes. Go back and listen to the other ones on the top 10 reasons why people get divorced. And
how we think you could help maybe navigate through those.
We're not really big fans of divorce. There are certain aspects where we think it makes sense. For sure. But preferably divorce is not an option. Yeah.
They're unless there's infidelity or physical abuse or like abuse in the relationship, there's very few things that can't be resolved through clear communication and just like sitting down, remembering you're on the same team and communicating with one another.
Yep. And even with infidelity, I think there are times when you can make amends with that. It's just consistent infidelity on that. It's just not going to be something. Yeah. So. Cool. Appreciate y'all. Check us out. Do us a favor. If you find value, just share this. Share these podcasts with people. Our goal is to provide as much feedback and help as possible and document kind of our lives. We took a little detour from that on the last 3 episodes, but we'll get back to that on the next one. And we appreciate all of y'all. Leave a comment, leave a like, drop a review. That'd be amazing. We'll catch you on the next podcast.
All right.
I love you.
Love you too.